In this video, I bought myself a new Jeep, a 1998 Jeep Grand Cherokee 5.9 Limited. I always thought these were interesting. It was the last year of the ZJ, or interesting. Last year of the ZJ, the big motor, which I like, and I found this one with just under 109,000 miles. Let's see what it takes to make it a good daily driver. We're in the daylight. Let's take a look around. 98 5.9 ZJ, 109,000 miles. Gorgeous in here. Needs to get vacuumed, but all the dust got wiped down. The gauge cluster with the MPG readout and thermometer works. Stereo pairs to the phone. Leather's not torn. Back here came with some wheel spacers. That's front drive shaft, needs a transfer case, but back seat not ripped or torn. Let's go look at the trunk. 5.9 limited only wheels. I like this feature quite a bit. Rear window pop-up. Kind of cool. I ordered some struts for that. It's got nice rubber floor mats all the way throughout. Decent sized trunk. All the lights work. Tow hitch. 5.9 ginormous exhaust tip. New tires, extremely puny passenger car tires, but they'll work for now. CJ was running a little hot today, and then I stopped somewhere and saw coolant pouring out. It was literally like squirting out one of these holes, so I think the shaft seal in the water pump's gone bad. So when it gets hot, it's pushing fluid there, so it's a good opportunity to change water pump, put a thermostat in it, all new fluid, and hopefully that's enough to keep this thing running cool. But let's see what we find. Oxidation in there, so maybe that has to do with a little bit of underflow. Been trying to get all the gasket material off, which has been terrible. It's been so incredibly well baked on there. But then I had to take the whole accessory bracket off to get to this crossover hose. It goes down to the water pump. I have no idea why it crosses over there, but that's what it does. And it's this little hose that, you know, is 25 years old, so I don't want to deal with that. So got that out, waiting on parts. But as I'm moving all this stuff out of the way, I can hear hissing, and basically at the swedged fitting back there, this AC line is leaking. Perhaps because of where I put the alternator, perhaps it already was slightly damaged and then exacerbated. I don't know. But I need to go learn how to change AC fittings and get the system recharged. Really, this hose here is leaking right at the edge of the swedge fitting. Another day, a little more progress. Here you can see the top of that crossover pipe where it goes into the water, or into the water pump. I put a real hose clamp on there, but I'm reusing all the factory hose clamps everywhere else. I hope I don't come to regret that, but there's just a gajillion clamps in the system here because there's a coolant temp sensor on both sides. I was reading and somebody online had a good theory for what they're for, but I don't remember. So I need to get that last clamp in, and then I need to take this guy apart, orient all the hoses right for the other one. A little mundane, but it's kind of interesting. The 5.2 and the 5.9 Grand Cherokees, I guess, use the same radiator hoses, but the 5.9 with the dual sensors, basically you line up where you need it, cut it, which I'm using a hacksaw, which seems to do a pretty good job. And then just make sure you got everything oriented properly. Should be good to go. So let me cut this and move over some clamps. To sum up, we have new water pump. We have 180-degree thermostat instead of the factory 195. Debate as to what that's actually going to do, but it's worth a shot. And then I wanted to try this VP Coolant Improver, which is something that Project Farm tested on YouTube. It had a good result. And then I'm also using the Baller antifreeze for the first time. Max protection. They're guaranteeing this antifreeze for 350,000 miles, which is easy to do because the radiator will crack long before then. But anything to help it out. Hopefully this thing runs as cool. So bleeding some air. Gonna fire it up here in a little bit when it stops bubbling. Just letting it idle. Just got up to temp where the thermostat open. And add some more fluid. You hear the generator running in the background because Edison's turned our power off, going on 35 hours or so. But that's another topic of if you're eating nonsense. But while there's light, I'm going to try and change the AC lines. I got both of them. So I got the one that comes with this, I think it's the accumulator, a little tank there. And then the other one that comes down to the condenser. New to learning about this crap, but I'm gonna change both lines. Everything I assume is already leaked out because of the damaged line, so no worries there. And then I got a pump and manifold set from the Amazon, and we're gonna see if we can't become AC experts here. Taking a little reference line. So the high and low pressure ports are on the pump. That's high there. A little bit of green goo came out, but there was almost no pressure. Low had 0 pressure, so it has all leaked out. This is the lines here. This one goes over, down, loops around there, boop, to the accumulator, whatever that thing is. And then the other one's coming, drops down here, heads down to the bottom there. I have the AC/fuel line remover toolkit from Amazon as well. Let's see how it works. There's the hose that came off. This fitting is, I believe, our culprit. That swedge fitting is what failed. But this has 2 sensor ports, and the replacement line only has 1. And after some panicked Googling, I realized that this line is specific to the 5.9s, and this, I believe, is a switch to kick the fan up to high speed when you turn the AC on. And they don't make a line. There's nobody that makes a line that has that fitting in it. So I'm just going to install that one and then see if there's a way. I need to confirm that this is for the fan switch. I think it is, but on the forums nobody makes it. It's the only hose anybody makes, so I'm going to install it and then I'll have to figure out the fan later, I guess. After much misery and profanity, both lines are connected. And pulled the radiator fan out, which luckily on this is very easy to do. It's just 2 bolts. So now to get the charge kit out and start figuring that. I'm losing light. Power is still out. Enjoy life at home. Don't tell me what to do. Just kidding. This is called Vivo Life. So can we see it? Anyway, Vivo Life. Great jobs for creativity, China. Oh my God, another package. It's like I'm opening some Russian dolls. This is how the pros do unboxing videos, isn't it? Oh my God, it's just boxes. Box, 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 box. We're gonna cut. All valves are open. Vacuum pump is on. It sounds terrible. It sounds like a bunch of metal fragments grinding around in there. But we are pulling about 20 pounds of vacuum there on the low pressure and a good 30 on the high pressure. So you're supposed to let this vacuum for 45 minutes. I'm skeptical that makes it 45 minutes, but mostly I'm running out of light. So I'm gonna figure out my next extension cord maneuvers and let this cook for a while. All right, so I had the vacuum pump on for a minute or so, and I turn it off with these valves closed, the valves down at the fittings open. So I wanna come back in a couple of minutes and see that these still are in vacuum. This one's at like, I don't know, 21, and this one's at 30 or so. If it'll stay that way for a while, that'll tell you don't have a gross leak. So, be back. I think we passed the leak test. I didn't wait 45 minutes as advised by the internet. I waited about 2 minutes, but good enough for me. It's getting too dark, so we're back vacuuming. I think that's going to be the most important part. Now, something I should have noticed earlier is this calls for 26 ounces of refrigerant. I only have 24 ounces of refrigerant. So I need to figure out if I can run less or if that's gonna like screw the whole thing up. Good news, the power's back on. Bad news, most everything else has gone wrong. So you have to follow this series of instructions, which there's a guy, Chris Fix, on YouTube that made a nice video of it on how to fill the system with the refrigerant. And there's this whole system, but as I'm going, the first can, I try to pierce it and there's just nothing coming out. Second can, I pierce it and it also seems like there's just super low pressure. It doesn't seem right. So I go to the store, I get more cans of refrigerant, and I buy their R134 valve. and the valve just seems to be really finicky. It's probably these stupid California cans, but when you pierce it, it's not a bunch of pressure. You pierce it and you got to dial it back a little bit, but not all the way open, and then you got to shake it, and like hardly anything comes out of it. It's very weird. But anyway, I'm doing all that, and you're supposed to, once you connect that, open only the low pressure side. Well, I opened both, which I just didn't realize. You know, I made a mistake first time doing this. I don't know if this was high enough pressure to where it blew some of that shit out of there, the refrigerant out of the high pressure side. That's my only hope. I don't know what kind of damage I'm doing here. But as I'm starting to figure this stuff out, this radiator hose blows off, and it goes up in a cloud of antifreeze like I've never seen. I mean, this whole Jeep's covered, and somehow it didn't burn me. It just got my right arm a little bit. But like that, if you take boiling coolant to the face, like that'll kill you. And it was boiling because I forgot to plug the electric fan back in. And I'm listening to the compressor and all the noisy tensioner and all this stuff, trying to pay attention to the air conditioning, didn't realize the fan wasn't blowing. So I got really, really lucky. The air is blowing cold, but as a result of all this fiddling, I have no idea how much refrigerant I put in there. I've used 3 cans, but I took 2 cans off that just no fluid was coming out of them, but they weren't empty. So I had no good way to measure it. I think this has been somewhat of a disaster, but I think the move's going to be to go have all this evacuated out of the system and then start over. Another day, we're doing it again. It's been vacuuming for 20 minutes or so just to make sure it's all dry. So I'm going to closed, turn this off, and now we're not against the clock, so I'm going to leave it for a while to check for leaks. So I'm going to come back in a while later. Pressure is holding. Let's attempt the recharge again and not open the high pressure valve this time. All right, we're on can number 1. These piercing valves are kind of weird. You put them in, but if you dial it all the way back, aka all the way open, it doesn't flow. So you got to dial it back just a little bit. And then I'm giving it little bits here and there. I'm trying to watch for fluid coming through the sight glass, which it feels like this one's kind of stopped, even though there is fluid. But now I see the high pressure side is super high, which is not supposed to be. Figure it out. Next up, I wanted to get a trans temp gauge on this thing. The trans cooler runs through the radiator, and the ZJ is really hard to get another trans cooler on. If I have to, I'll figure it out. But I added a weld-on bung for the glow shift gauge. Hoping I have good luck with this glow shift gauge. I haven't liked their stuff that I've had in the past, but we'll see. And then this is a drain plug kit, again from Amazon. Comes with these. Gonna weld that on also, throw some paint at this thing and swap the filter in the pan and stick it back up there. But drain pans with no drain plug are stupid. Drain plug, sensor port. I'll go change the filter in the transmission and then come slap this on. After a Texas chainsaw style mess, new Wix filter is in. Just 2 Torx T25s here. And there's a grommet here that hopefully seals the filter on. Let's go get that pan. Just a little trick to help get this rubber gasket down. I have some Permatex's red gasket sealant. It's not RTV, it doesn't dry. It just has some high tack, so it holds the gasket on there and gives it a little extra sealing. I'm not gonna do both sides, but that holds these, because these rubber gaskets always have a weird shape to them, so everything's lined up real nice. I'll wipe off the bottom of the transmission and send it up. While I'm here, I'll mention this has a K&N cold air intake, which I'm not a big K&N guy, but I'm also not gonna be sucking tons of dust in this. I wouldn't put these on a wheeling rig. I always try and go for a paper filter. I just think they do a better job of dirt and dust. But for this rig, it should be just fine. And it's new, and I oiled it the other day. I didn't know if the previous people had put oil on the filter or not, so I just oiled it. Adding our ATF Plus 4. According to the interwebs, it should take 6 quarts. Normally, if I have a good drain pan that has the measurements, I'll just go off of that, but the one I used didn't. So put 5 in, take it off the jacks and measure it. Change the struts for the pop-out window. Now I'm going to change this last strut here. I did that one the other day. This right side just came in. They have a bracket here with 2 7mm Torx bits. Actually, they're 6-point, I don't know what you call this thing, inverted Torx, but I have sockets that fit that. So I'll hold the hatch up with my head. Got the impact there, jam it in, see if I can do it a little. She's in. I preloaded the flathead to hold the little clip there. Make sure that's all pushed in. Perfect. Should stay open. Cold or hot now. Changed out this transmission mount. In my experience, every single four-wheel drive everything that you buy that's used, the transmission mount is smoked. This one doesn't look bad, but it's split along the edges there, so not totally wasted, but pretty bad. Oil change next. Extra windy, so all this blows right in my face. Oil filter perfectly positioned to pour oil over lots of things. That's all right. We have touchdown. Oil added. And all kind of mixed information as to whether it needs 5 or 6 quarts, but I have a service manual I'm going to go consult. So far there's 5 in it. I got one of these single gauge pods from Glow Shift, just a double-ended sticky. It's got a hole on the back that the little wiring harness will run through. This location hopefully is not something the passenger bumps into with their leg all the time, but I couldn't fit it here. I'm not sticking it on top of the dash because those always melt in the sun and just fall off. And if I stick it down here, the wiring can immediately go into the console and disappear. And I also didn't want to drill any holes. So hopefully this does the trick. I can see it. I'm not going to bump into it. We'll see what the passengers do. I ran a wire, drilled a hole up above the throttle cable, way up under the dash there. That was clear through, put a little grommet in it. Just have some Harbor Freight grommets. And ran the signal wire from the sensor up in the cab, and it connects to the green wire, and then it's buried back there a little bit. Now I'm connecting the wires through here. I found a ground. This is the fuse panel here. Just playing with basically the test light here. So I found, I believe, a good ground for an unused relay, using a wire tap here off the cigar lighter for constant 12 volt, which, you know, you try and pick something not critical there, which that is certainly not very critical. And now I have another fuse tap here for the 12 volt switched, and I'm tapping into this fuse here, which is the rear washer. So if these things, you know, lose connection or just be lousy, I'm not going to lose anything critical here, and it'll be easy to diagnose. As you hook up a constant 12 volt, a switched 12 volt, aka when you turn the ignition on, and a ground. Now it also has another wire for when the headlights are on, which I assume dims the gauge. I'm going to try it for a while and see if I really need that. But let's see if I found good points. Hooray! Cool. And again, it's reading, you know, really low because the trans is cold. Next up, working on the parking brake, handbrake. Basically, when I bought the Jeep, it worked good, and then in about a week and a half, it's loosened up so much that it won't hold the Jeep at all. So the way these works, there's a little drum in there, so I'm gonna get the caliper out of the way, see what we find. First thing, the caliper was really hard to get off because they put, see how this has a tang to lock it in there? These are supposed to be on the same side, so this one's flipped side to side, so it was a bear to get it out of there. So I need to get the one from the other side and fix this so that the caliper comes on and off like it should. And I'm playing with the adjuster down here. So basically I want to adjust this where the shoes are as spread as wide as I can get them where the shoe still fits. The other thing I found is they had the tangs on this bent out pretty far, so if you pulled on the actual cable housing, it had quite a bit of slop. I already pressed that in and got some of the slop out of it, so that's a little bit when you pull the e-brake handle. You know, there was a little bit of slop that wasn't pulling on things, so little by little, working my way through it. Something else I'm working under here. This is basically under the e-brake of the car, and this is where the 2 cables from each rear brake assembly comes. And this adjuster had been run all the way down, which is how you tighten up basically the handbrake in the car. But it's run so far down that I think the levers are not releasing all the way back to open at the actual brake drum. So I'm not getting as much sweep out of it as I should be. So I'm going to back this off quite a bit, then set the drums at the axle as tight as I can and see if all the slop's out of the system. So I backed this nut off all the way until I started getting some slop between these two. See, it's kind of sloppy now. So that tells me that these cables have retracted at the drum as far as they can. So now I'll screw this back just a little bit to get a little bit of load on there, and that should give us full range of motion without having a bunch of slop at the handbrake. So I'm going to tighten this just a couple of turns, get a little bit of the slop here out, and this should be... To show it from another angle, basically that preload I was doing under the Jeep is setting how much this lever is already getting pulled on. And if it was already pulled partially, then it's already pressing on the shoes. You can see it right down there. See what's moving there? So if that was not retracting all the way, then I wasn't getting full range of motion when I pull the handbrake, and it limits how much movement these shoes can have before they're just totally out of adjustment like they were. So I'm happier with that. So here's the spreader adjuster here. So as I open that up, it spreads the shoe more, and I want to get it to where basically the rotor just slides over it and is tight. This is not tight yet, so I'm going to adjust it out more until it's pretty snug. You don't want to go crazy tight with it because then you end up just wearing the brake shoes off and dragging. But you can go pretty tight on the e-brake because they don't have a self-tightening mechanism the way a full drum brake will. I've set drum brakes up where they feel good here. You drive them down the street, they self-tighten, and all of a sudden the rear brakes are locking up. So I'll get these nice and snug, or just off snug, and they'll be good, and we'll move to the other side. Finding all kinds of issues here. We are on the other side. When they put the adjusters in, the other way was this side, the other side was this way also. They didn't put the adjuster up in the groove there. They just put it on the flats, which has allowed it to come out, and actually this has just been riding against the rotor. I can just pry that right out. That wasn't doing anything. So let's get this in the groove and adjust it properly. Good action here. Everything looks dirty with the light on the phone on, but don't worry about that. The adjusters for those parking brake drums being in the wrong place explains why I could not get to the adjusters last night through the sight hole. Now you'll be able to get to it through the sight hole. So I'll drive it for a couple of days. The e-brake system will loosen up as those shoes kind of bed in a little bit, and then I can put a little more preload on everything, and it should be easier to keep it serviceable. I admit defeat on the air conditioning system. I've gotten the pressures in spec, the volume in spec, and it'll work for a little bit, and then the pressures will just absolutely go ballistic, like 400 plus PSI on the high side, 60 or so on the low side. So I've bled more air out of the low side multiple times to where there can't hardly be any refrigerant in it, and it's doing the exact same thing. So there's something wrong that I don't understand. So on Monday, I'm gonna call around to some auto AC shops, see if I can get somebody in there. So we're back from the AC shop today, and let me show you what changed here. So if you have a ZJ with a V8 of any kind, this is the only hose anybody makes that you can buy. And as you can see, it has one port there, which would be for the high pressure switch. Throw this out of the way because it's useless. High pressure switch. Now the 5.9 also has a fan trigger. Now this is not just a switch. If you jump the wires, the fan does not turn on. Apparently this is some kind of a resistor. And it's a more complicated system where when this turns the low speed fan on, it can also be deactivated later if the engine gets hot enough and the high speed fan switches on, so that you never have both the high and low speed circuits of this fan on at the same time. But basically I'd installed, after this hose failed, I'd installed the only one you could get, which just had the high pressure switch. And I thought the fan wouldn't really matter because if it's hot out and I'm using the air conditioning, the motor is coming up to operating temp, which kicks on the radiator fan, and maybe the AC just doesn't blow super cold until then. Well, I didn't understand that if there's no airflow moving past the condenser, the pressures will pretty immediately spike. So I originally had the AC system charged correctly, and it would work a little bit, but once the system got hot, the compressor got hot, the condenser got hot, those pressures on the high and low side would just climb. So local AC shop actually took this hose from my 5.9 and sweated a new end here I'm not totally sure why they put a new end on there. Actually, that looks like the same end. I think they left that one alone, but they sweated a new end on here. You can see the, not incredibly straight, but hopefully it works. And then new swedged fitting here, new swedged fitting there, and again, they sweated on a new section of pipe to my existing old pipe there. Something that made the Jeep a little less pleasant to drive was the totally blown out rear speakers. The front speakers seem okay. The rear speakers looked like this, and they sounded like going down the road, so those are pretty terrible. So I went to Best Buy, picked up a set of these Kicker, what do they call these things? CS65s. They're 6.5 inches. You got to drill new holes to mount them, but they just go right in the factory location. You look down there, you can just see a little bit of that signature yellow kicker going on. This is a two-way or a coaxial speaker, and the sound difference is dramatic. It's awesome. I can listen to music without it just going through the back seat. It's great. So to sum up my can you get a Jeep ZJ and make a good daily driver out of it? The answer is kind of. It drives great. It's got plenty of power. It cruises around in overdrive most of the time. It's small. The turning radius is better than most passenger cars. It's got good AC now. I've got a good stereo now that connects to Bluetooth with the aftermarket head unit that was already in it, but having changed out the incredibly blown speakers, the sound quality is great. There's no leather tears. The dash is in great shape. The headliner's not falling down. So on one hand, it's a really good car. On the other hand, there's still a long way to go. The steering's totally worn out. We're gonna find out this coming weekend when I take it camping with the camper if the cooling system is up to the task to tow the 1,100 or 1,200 pound camper and my family in the car. I'm a little skeptical, but we'll see what happens there. But I'll now be able to watch the trans temp. I know the coolant temperature gauge in the car works well. All new water pump cooling system. Brakes are dialed in. The parking brake works well now. So we've come a long way. Still a few more things to do. All right, we're coming up the hill. It's 86 degrees now, but it's been 100 all day. Cruising the Jeep. We're at whatever temperature that is. 235 or so, but it's holding it. The trans temp's getting warm. We're just about to touch 220 here. Hope we're making it up the hill. Shannon's in there grilling. Started grilling outside, and then the rain blew in. Rain and hail 50-50 split. Rest of the gang's in the camper. We're just kind of battening down the hatches here. So to sum up, I've been driving the Jeep for a few weeks now. It's driving well, but some stuff it still needs. The steering is really worn out. It goes down the road pretty nice actually, but you're doing quite a bit of this with a dead wheel. So whether that's going to end up being steering box or all just tie rod ends and stuff, I think it's the steering box because the ends in the steering linkage don't look that bad, but that's something to be done. The interior lights don't turn on when you open the door. I've checked relays, checked fuses. Normally if you have one of the door switches go bad, the lights stay on, but the lights never turn on unless you hit the buttons and turn them on. So weird stuff like that. Sometimes when you lock the car, the driver's side electric mirror moves around. So just electrical stuff going wrong. But I wanted to give you a taste of the budget and how I track this stuff. So every vehicle I get, I make one of these Excel charts for it where I track what I spent. So as you can see here, some of the highlights. Bought the truck for $3,800. The AC shop, which luckily resolved the issue, but that was $450. There's going to be stuff in here like the registration and license fees that aren't on here. So, and I'm sure there's some little odds and ends. So basically I'm in the Jeep, $5,500, and it needs, obviously I haven't fixed the transfer case yet. So that's going to be putting in an NP231 more likely than not, and a rear drive shaft. And then we'll see what other kind of stuff comes along down the road. But for now, it's a good driver.